you must be the aggressor. This rhetoric is tearing apart the fabric of our relationships, our workplaces, and our communities. This constant need to be right, to be validated, and to be agreed with has become a toxic force in our society. So where does it all start? It starts with one single assumption, an assumption that we believe to be right. One single assumption has the power to kill curiosity, cultivate judgment, and suffocate understanding. It shuts down every other possibility because what we believe to be true is. And that makes our assumptions dangerous because they're not facts. They're personal biases masquerading as truth, and they shape how we see and experience the world. When I walked out here today, you all saw the same thing. And when I started to speak, you all heard the same thing. But you didn't all perceive what you saw and heard in the same way. Consciously or unconsciously, you made assumptions about this talk and about me as a person, me as a speaker, maybe even me as a woman. Now, some of you may be thinking, oh, this is going to be great because I love British accents. And some of you may be thinking, oh, dear God, I hate British accents. This is going to be the longest 15 minutes of my entire life. Whatever you're thinking, your assumptions have already shaped how you will experience this talk and maybe even the rest of today. Our assumptions are the filters through which we experience the world and the veil through which we interact with others and interpret other people's intentions. One single assumption has the power to influence our interactions, our relationships, our workplaces, and the communities in which we live. Our assumptions don't merely just inform our world, they create it. On the 14th of March, 2014, I woke up in a hotel room with absolutely no idea where I was. Now, that wasn't particularly unusual. I traveled a lot for work, and waking up in unfamiliar surroundings wasn't new to me. But that day was different. It usually took me a good few seconds to figure out where I was, but on that day, it took me more than 15 minutes. But when I did figure out where I was, I still had questions. How did I get there? When did I get there? Why was I there? And when was I supposed to be leaving? So I thought about calling reception and asking them for some clarity, but what was I going to say without sounding as though I totally lost my mind? So I thought about calling a colleague and asking them if they could shed some light. But again, what would I say without sounding as though I was completely crazy? So I called my husband because he knows I'm crazy. And he must have heard the panic in my voice because he said, "Don't move, I'm coming to get you." In the 90 minutes it took him to get to me, I sat on the edge of the bed, gripping that duvet as though my life depended on it, just forcing air into and out of my lungs. When he arrived at the hotel, he took one look at me, bundled me and my belongings into the car, and drove me straight to my doctor's office. And it was there I learned I was in the throes of a significant near-catastrophic mental and physical breakdown, a severe burnout. A burnout that had been precipitated by some really challenging life events and compounded by fighting to survive in a toxic workplace culture. After 23 years of consistent success in organizations and companies I loved and still love, I crashed. And it left me deeply ashamed, really frustrated, and very angry. That burnout changed how I saw and experienced the world. And I went back into the workplace through this filter of anger and frustration, and I treated everybody as an enemy and as though I was under attack. But the interesting thing is, when you treat people as adversaries, you not only find them, you create them. I assumed people were holding back and not telling me the truth, so I poked and prodded and interrogated them. But rather than honesty and openness, what I got instead were massaged messages and people dancing on eggshells around me and avoiding me if at all possible. I was fighting to survive in a vortex I was creating. My assumptions were not passive. They were generative. I know this now. I didn't know it then. So I continue to act from this place of anger and frustration and irritation for a good long time. I was angry with everybody about everything all the time. And I was exhausted. Now, at this point, I would love to be able to stand here and tell you that I had an epiphany and that there were bluebirds and angels flying around my head and with the answers to this misery that I was living, but that never happened. There were no bluebirds, there were no angels, and there were no answers. So I continued to live from that place of anger and frustration for a really long time. One morning, I was standing in the shower getting ready to go to work, deciding how I was going to get through the day. And as I was washing my hair, this thought crept into my head. And that thought was, I wonder who else is standing in the shower right now, washing their hair, deciding how they're going to piss me off today. And as I thought it, I thought, my God, that's ridiculous. You're just not that important. Like, nobody is standing in the shower deciding how they're going to piss you off today. Nobody's standing in the shower even giving you a second thought. And that made me wonder. I wonder how much of this misery that I'm living has got more to do with me than it has to do with those irritating, annoying, frustrating people I have to work with every day. I mean, what was the common denominator? Me. My assumptions, my actions, my words. That was a really hard truth to face, but it was a really important one because it opened a different door to what was possible. One that would mean a significant shift in my thinking and my behavior. But so far, being angry and irritated with everyone all the time hadn't given me the results that I wanted. Think about people you interact with. We act from a place of our own experience, our own assumptions, and our own judgment. But so does everybody else. What if someone's anger has got nothing to do with you and it's just a personal demon that they're fighting? And what if someone's verbosity isn't arrogance, but it's fear of being judged and exposed? What if someone's upbringing, culture, values, education, and experience are completely different to yours? Does that mean that they're wrong and you're right, or does that just mean that we're uninformed about their intentions? I made a very conscious decision that I was going to replace all of my unconscious assumptions with one conscious one. That people were just doing their best with the information, the experience, and the skills that they had available to them at the time. I decided to put it to the test, not because I was feeling brave, by the way, quite the opposite, but because I was out of steam, out of energy, and out of time. I started to notice when I felt irritated and angry and frustrated and irritated, and I noticed that as signs of unconscious assumptions, and I chose to replace them with that one. I choose to assume this person is doing their best with the information, skill, and education and experience they have available to them right now. Interestingly, when I started to be curious, people opened up. When I stopped bracing for an attack, I stopped receiving one. And where I expected decency, I saw it. I hadn't changed the world overnight, but I had changed the story I was telling myself about it. And that story started to be reflected back to me in the world around me. It was as though I had put down a sword I didn't even know I was holding. We tell ourselves that we react to reality. We don't. We react to what we assume reality to be. And what we assume, we create. Our assumptions, those quiet, unchallenged, often inherited assumptions, set the tone and the trajectory of our lives and create the world we live in. They color how we interpret others and how we move through the world and create our destiny. Our assumptions are not private, they're not passive, and they're not neutral. They ripple outward and forward. When we choose to assume consciously, courageously, even experimentally, we open a different door to what's possible. One that leads to connection, not isolation. One that leads to understanding, not rejection. And one that leads to a more connected, lived experience. The way that we assume people will act and interact often becomes the way they do. The stories we tell ourselves often become our lived reality. And over time, those stories become the tone of our families, the culture of our organizations and our communities. and they are the very foundations upon which our futures are built. So this is my invitation to you, to see your assumptions for what they are, not facts, but choices. It's my invitation to you to see your own anger, frustration, and irritation as indicators of your unconscious assumptions and to replace them with just one: that people are just doing their best with the information, skill, and experience they have available to them at the time. The truth is, our assumptions create our reality. And in a world increasingly defined by division, this small but deeply human shift to assume that people are doing their best has the power to reimagine how we relate to ourselves and collectively how together we can send positive ripples into tomorrow. Thank you.